Presenting now are Tioluwalogo Olakunbi-Black and Osakue Stevenson Omoera. Tioluwalogo Olakunbi-Black is a research fellow and adjunct professor in communication at African Musicology Institute, University of Venda, South Africa. His scholarship examines the intersections of Christian film, new Nollywood, performance and cultural communication, with particular attention to how media and the arts construct identity and reflect socio-cultural realities. He is especially interested in the ways literature, technology, and screen practices interact to shape collective memory and inspire social transformation. As an emerging voice in African media scholarship, Olakunbi-Black's work advances critical conversations on the role of creative expression in negotiating cultural belonging and generational identity. Osakue Stevenson Omoera is a chair professor in the Department of Theatre and Film Studies and Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at Federal University, Otuoke, Bayelsa State, Nigeria. He is a leading scholar in applied media, film, and theatre studies. Also, he is a senior research fellow and adjunct professor at the University of Venda, South Africa. The foci of his research are Nollywood studies with an emphasis on indigenous language films, media sociology with an emphasis on the social impacts of the media, and cultural dynamics with a focus on theatre and African performance studies, cultural communication, African literature, and development communication. He developed the home-frontism paradigm for the study and theoretical fortification of African film studies. Professor Omoera has consulted for national and international organizations, and he is well-traveled and has published extensively in leading journals and specialist books. He is a recipient of the Association for Cultural Studies Finland Grant, the Shenzhen Forum Grant, Shenzhen University, among other laurels. They will be presenting the role of Yoruba music in narrative formation within Nigerian Christian films.
Good morning, everyone. So the last profile they just read is not me, it's Professor Osakue. Good morning, distinguished chair, respected scholars, colleagues, and fellow participants online and present here. So my name is Dr. Tioluwalogo Olakunbi-Black, and this paper is co-authored with Professor Osakue Stevenson Omoera. So I'll just move straight to it. But before I go there, I want to say something that today I want to just invite you to join us in interrogating African music from the lens of Nigerian Christian cinema. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next 15 minutes. Why this study? Right? Nigerian Christian films have attracted considerable scholarly attention. Considerable, not none. Particularly from theological, film, and cultural perspective, right? But scholars have examined what I'll call their evangelistic function, the moral messaging, the visual storytelling. But one critical dimension that seems to be largely overlooked, not ignored, but largely overlooked, is music. And this omission is significant because you would agree with me that African storytelling has never been purely visual. There is always the musical side to it. To begin, I would like to start by rethinking. Sorry, my slides are not moving. Somebody help. Please help so that you can stay with me. It's not moving. All right. I really want you to see. All right, thank you. All right, so I wanted to start the conversation by, first of all, rethinking African musics. And believe you me, the first time I came across this, what came to mind was the conversation that happened around African literature in 1963 by Obiwali, where there was a conversation around what truly is African literature. Is it literature that is written in African language, or is it literature that is written in the English language? And there were two sides of the divide. The first school was led by Obiwali, who said that for us to truly, or Ugugiwa Tiogo said that for us to truly call a work, a piece of art, African, is that it must be written in African language. And he proceeded to write all the rest of his works in African language. But then the Chinua Achebe of blessed memory had a different position to it. And his own position was that I can still make use of this Western language, but guess what? I can domesticate it. I can use it to my own benefit. I can infuse all my cultural nuances, the idioms, idiomatic expressions, the metaphors, whatever it is, figurative expressions, into it, that when you read it and put it side by side with a piece of work written by a Westerner, you will see the clear distinction. The big question is, what side of the divide you fall under? Because that also applies to how we rethink African musicology, or African musics, as the case may be. I'll take it a notch ahead, right? In terms of rethinking the core concepts in that regard. Okay, I'm not sure why it keeps going back. Anyways. Okay, all right. I'll take it a step further in retaking the core concepts. And these core concepts are seen in the title, based on the variables, right? The first one is Yoruba music. And the question that we're trying to provocate here, or the questions that we raise during the course of this work, is what really is Yoruba music? What makes a music to be classified as Yoruba music? Is it because, or is it that the author or composer is of Yoruba descent? Or what makes it Yoruba music? Is it the use of the language? What makes it Yoruba music? Is it the message that it's passing, the people it's talking about, right? What makes it Yoruba language? Can a song be sung in another language, but yet still be classified as Yoruba music? Now, we moved on to also interrogate the second variable, which is in terms of music narrative, the form narrative. Here, what we try to raise is that how are we able to view music not as a background accompaniment, something that just accompanies the visuals that you see, but as a narrative architecture, something that shapes the plot, something that develops the character, that you can almost follow through with the music and see that this character has changed. Not the same sound or music that was played at the beginning when he has finally gotten to his point of victory or whatever it is. You know, there is a change in the sound. There's a change in the kind of music. Is it intentional? Is it unintentional? Or they just put music for music's sake, to back up this thing? And then we move on to the third variable, which is what really makes up a Christian film. Again, I ask, what is Christian? What does it mean to be Christian? If I ask and say we should do a survey here, and everyone raises up their hand, it's possible that someone of the other religion can boldly say, there have been cases where the person says, I'm a Christian, and can quote the Bible. They can mention one or two scriptures. So we ask again, what truly does it mean to be Christian? For us to be able to define what it truly means, or what a Christian film encapsulates. So in my research, my PhD thesis, I tried to explore this. And my conclusion is that there's no holistic definition for this kind of things. And the best thing to play safe is to have working definitions depending on different contexts. And so what we did was to come up with different schools of thought to help us conceptualize this phenomenon called Christian film. And it's imperative because I cannot talk about the African music without the Christian film, because that's the essence of my work. And so we categorize it into three. There's the evangelical school of thought, right? And these ones are led by Mike Bamiloye, the sermonic in nature. Their films can almost feel like a sermon from start to finish, right? In that regard. They don't call themselves actors. They refer to themselves as drama ministers. They don't see the film as a means to attain stardom. There's nothing like star system in their own approach. But they see it as it's a message, and the message is as important as the messenger. There's a second school of thought, the liberalist, led by Helen Ukpabio. And Helen Ukpabio is of the opinion that if the Bible says go into the world and bring them in, she says you have to go out and use somebody that they recognize. And so she started to employ the use of secular artists to lead her films. But now the sermonic guys, or the evangelical school of thought, they argue and say, why should I watch a film in when X characters acted as a prostitute in a former film, and then I'm seeing her as a pastor here, doesn't it distort, whatever message it is that you think you're trying to pass? But the argument goes on. And then the last school of thought, the commercialists. Those ones don't care about anything. They just sprinkle Jesus on the story. And they end the story with, to God be the glory, right? The goal for them is just to make money. They're not really concerned about whether you believe you accept Jesus as a personal Lord or Savior. They really don't care. They just want to make money. Buy the film. It makes you feel good. Okay, good for you. And you buy the film. Now, I've said all of these conceptual positions to enable us to provide a lens through which the findings that we follow should be understood. I'll move on to the next. Oh my God, my slides are not working with me. Is there a remote or something? I should sprinkle Jesus. Okay, I'll just go on and hope it's fixed. Now, the next is the analytical framework, right? To examine the role of Yoruba music in Nigerian Christian. Okay, yes, thank you. To examine the role of Yoruba music in Nigerian Christian cinema, the study adopted an integrated analytical framework, right? First, we looked at Femi Adedeji's functional musicology theory, right? And this explained what music does. What exactly does music do? His concepts of anabolic and catabolic functions helped us to see how sacred music mediates healing, spiritual formation, warfare, and of course, in Nigerian Christian film, deliverance. We looked at Bode Omojola's ethnomusicological perspective, where he explained what Yoruba music represents. That Yoruba music itself is Yoruba. Looked at it from the lens of cultural identity, looked at it from the lens of agency, looked at it from the lens of performance, right? And then he explained that what Yoruba music really frames in terms of indigenous forms, such as Oriki, Oriemi, and the talking drum as expressions of cultural identity and spiritual agency. Finally, we also looked at Michael Cheon's cinematic sound theory, just to help us understand how music creates meaning, in film through the interaction of sound and image, shaping narrative, theology, audience perception. I'll move on very quickly to our methodological approach. We employed a qualitative interpretive research design, and the analysis focused on 5 Mount Zion Faith Ministries films produced between the year 2019 and 2023. And these films were selected purposefully. It was through purposive sampling because they are information-rich cases chosen for their contemporary relevance, musical richness, theological diversity, and of course, comparative depth. Right? The analysis was conducted through 3 complementary procedures in terms of musical and structural analysis, where we examined, and also the second level is linguistic and semantic analysis, and finally, the audiovisual narrative analysis. Together, these methods helped us to provide a robust framework for understanding Yoruba music as an active narrative and theological resource within Nigerian Christian cinema. So this is just an overview of the musical typology across the works. In terms of the train and Enoch, the musical type is spiritual chant. And you see the function of that is calling and divine presence. Same with the acoustic ballad, Gbemi, Afro-gospel fusion, Abattoir and Gbemi, which helped with the spiritual warfare functionality. Call and response in Enoch, which helped with the communal worship. All I just want you to take from this is that the musical types interact to shape character journeys, intensify spiritual experiences, and communicate theological meaning with Nigerian Christian cinema. All right. So I'll move on to the key findings. 5 interconnected findings. First is that the Yoruba music functions as a narrative architecture. And what it does is that it actively shapes plot progression, character development, rather than just accompanying the visuals. The second is that music performs theological work, communicating doctrines of grace, doctrines of deliverance, doctrines of calling and redemption. The third is the traditional Yoruba instruments are resignified. What is known in terms of the talking drum, for example, it has moved beyond its historical association, to embody a new meaning that is being used. Something that was made out of goat skin, used to for traditional worshiping now, is still seen in the Christian milieu, but then now it has taken on a new meaning. Finally, drawing on Cleon's theory, in terms of, there was also the fourth, which is contemporary Afro-gospel demonstrates that indigenous musical identity is not displaced by modernity. Rather, what happens is that it is renewed through it. And collectively, these findings position Yoruba music not as background sound, but as that native or active narrative, theological and cultural force within contemporary Nigerian Christian cinema. These findings led us to, beyond the individual findings, the study also, yes, I'm with you. The study also advances three broader interpretive insights that explain how Yoruba music, how it functions within this same ecosystem. First, the finding revealed that a movement from sacred heritage to sacred sound, that is, traditional Yoruba musical resources and indigenous rhythmic forms, are no longer rejected. Once upon a time, it was seen as a demonization, but now it is seen as a communication, right? As a form of communication. And so Christians, instead, they are resignified as instruments of worship, prophecy, and spiritual warfare. Second, the study demonstrates that tradition does not require stagnation. And finally, the analysis shows that music functions as the primary medium through which invisible spiritual realities become cinematically perceptible. Through Cheon's concept of added value and syncrasies, together with Adedeji's functional theory, sound enables audiences not only to witness spiritual events, but also to experience them. Taking together these insights, position Yoruba music as a narrative, theological, and cultural system that constructs meaning, mediates faith, and preserves indigenous identity within Nigerian Christian cinema. Okay? And so, I have 3 more minutes. The study reframes the role of film music. Second, the study proposes an interdisciplinary analytical framework that brings together the 3 theories that were mentioned. Third, the finding also documents how contemporary Christian cinema, how it successfully modernizes Yoruba sacred music through Afro-gospel and contemporary cinematic sound. Finally, the study contributes to ongoing conversations on decolonizing African music scholarship by showing how traditional instruments, once dismissed as pagan, are reclaimed as legitimate vehicles of Christian worship, narrative meaning, and indigenous agency. Ultimately, this research positions Yoruba music simply not as a cultural inheritance, but as an active, narrative, theological, and cinematic resource within the Nigerian cinema. Building on these contributions, we conclude by proposing a conceptual framework that synthesizes the study's central argument and illustrates how Yoruba music generates narrative, theological, and cultural meaning. And here it is. This framework represents the central argument of our study. And we are proposing that Yoruba music begins to function as an integrated narrative system, rather than simply that background element. At the center of this framework is Yoruba music, from which 3 interconnected dimensions emerge. First, the narrative dimension. Second, the theological dimension. And third, the cultural dimension, where indigenous musical practices preserve Yoruba identity, sustain tonal traditions, and contextualize Christianity within an African worldview. Together, these dimensions converge to produce audience meaning and spiritual experiences, ultimately leading to what we describe as narrative theology in Christian cinema, a space where story, faith, and culture, they meet through sound. In conclusion, this study makes 3 principal contributions. First, it encourages us to rethink African music, not as a static cultural artifact, but as an active system of narrative and meaning-making within contemporary media. Second, it invites us to rethink Christian cinema in Nigeria by recognizing that theology is communicated not only through dialogue and visual imagery, but equally through sound and music. Third, it demonstrates that Yoruba musical traditions remain living and adaptive, continuing to negotiate faith, identity, culture within modern African, or, I dare say, Nigerian Christianity. Ultimately, this paper argues that Yoruba music should be understood not as a cinematic ornamentation alone, but as an indispensable narrative resource that shapes how audiences interpret, experience, and remember Nigerian Christian films. To understand Nigerian Christian films, I say, my dear colleagues, we must learn not to only watch its images, but also to listen to its theology. thank you, and music speaks, cinema sees. Together they reveal meaning.
I don't know if you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you. I think we should go on to the next presentation quickly.
I think we want to do Q&A first.
Okay,
Yes.
question and answer, yeah.
Exactly.
So the room is open for questions. It's been a very wonderful presentation on Yoruba music, theology, repositioning Yoruba music as narrative architecture. So is there any question from the room or online? I mean, virtually. There is one here, but I don't know if there were hands raised in the room. You could help with that.
Yes.
Okay, let's start with the online question quickly. Thank you, Dr. Tioluwalogo, right? Stevenson,
Yes,
and
please.
Professor Stevenson and Olakunbi-Black. Thank you. So there's a question online saying, sir, can music in Nigerian Christian films function independently as an evangelistic medium, even when separated from visual narrative? In other words, can soundtrack itself communicate the gospel effectively?
That's a beautiful...
Did you want to speak to that quickly?
Yes, that's a very beautiful question. And yes, my answer to that is yes. And that is why you notice that there is now a new evolution of beyond when the film is released with the soundtrack, people still release the soundtracks separately as another body of art, right? So I believe it communicates. Also, I'll make reference to one of the films and the songs that we cited. I don't know if you've seen Dide. That's yes, J. Mike, the song. If we bring out the lyrics of that song, you see that it's Isaiah 61. It's Isaiah 61. So yes, they can stand alone, but I think that the beauty of it also, I want to also veer into the fact of how you can look at music as a performance as well. And so for me, the way I see it is that as the music is playing and those actions on the screen is happening by the actors, that's a form of performance that is happening with the background music that is going on. So yes, it can. Yes. I think somebody...
And you want us to consider the theological aspect?
I believe in terms of theological effect, it's the message. If there is a beginning, middle, and the end, and it's not distorted in terms of what is being communicated via the music, I believe that, yes, it can. It has theological effect.
Any other question in the room? Dr. Oladele, are there hands raised there?
Yes. Thank you, Doc. Very, very wonderful presentation. I want to ask this, your ideology or concept, what do you think about it can it be adapted to stage performance, in terms of people do on the stage? Is it adaptable to stage performances?
So that's a beautiful question. And I don't know, I can speak for Mount Zion Institute of Christian Drama. And I know that with their drama presentations, what they do is that they do full-blown audio productions. So rather than you having like a chorus, singing, you can have the chorus miming to whatever the song, but what the audience will be listening to would be what has been recorded in that regard. I believe that sort of improves the experience that the audience gets. In that,
away from that,
okay.
Maybe in schools, in universities, faith-based universities like
Yes.
this, can it be a way where those chorus section can infuse this into...
That's what I just explained. What I was talking about is Mount Zion Institute of Christian Drama. So there's a school, and they're in collaboration with Redeemers University, and they run a degree program in Christian drama and film. So what I'm saying is that, yes, they can do that, and how they've done that is by having the productions beforehand. So it's like you're listening to the live music as well as experiencing the live performance.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Doc. Well done, job. I actually appreciate the approach. Now, I wouldn't know whether you have explored
I'm
this.
wondering if we could have the next presenter now because time has...
Okay, Doc, maybe after this. Now, I wouldn't know whether you have explored this because music in drama, like track, is actually different from Christian music drama. I want you to speak to that. Christian music drama.
So music in drama is different
music
from...
as a backup in accompaniment is actually different from Christian music drama. Have you explored that?
So to what I said initially, right? I don't believe that there is any Christian drama that would infuse anyhow music. They will be intentional about the music that they will. But then I said the bone of contention really is what we define as Christian music, right? So if it meets the context of what it is in terms of authorial vision, like I said, if it is an evangelical school of thought, drama group or film body that is doing that, the song that they will do will be sermonic in nature. If it is the liberal ones, you might not hear so much of Jesus, but then you will know that, yes, it's a Christian music that you're listening to. I don't know if that answers your question, sir.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. So this research is something I'm very, very much interested in, and it happens to be something I'm also researching on. So I have a question. It is beyond dialogue, right? I mean, we pay attention to dialogue, sound effects, ambience, foley, and the likes of that. So beyond dialogue, can we have a situation where music is put at the forefront rather than dialogue? So we have in film that there's no dialogue, that we have music that's telling the story.
Yeah, we could produce that film together.
Probably can, actually. So is that a thing that we can explore in the Nigerian
yes,
100%.
100%. I think that's the beauty of art itself. There's no box. There's no box. That's the beauty of art itself. That you can explore whatever it is. And I think that would be really beautiful. I think on stage as well, it'll be miming, and then the sound is going on. And then if it's on screen, it's like music, and then it's just actions. There's still performance going on, however you choose to look at it.
Thank you very much for your beautiful and insightful presentation. However, my question has to do with the, you talked about music, Yoruba music, having its own architecture, sonic architecture in which it speaks. And so I was wondering, what do you mean by Yoruba music? Are we looking at the cultural, communal, what we communally agree to be Yoruba music, which
I knew this was going to happen.
And
that's why I raised those questions in the beginning. Yeah. I knew that this was going to happen.
So I think you need to give a conceptualize. Although you problematized it, but you didn't seem to have a particular...
So I actually did, and I'll just read out what I said in that regard. And like I said, it's a working definition, and it's what suffices for my work. So I said, what makes music Yoruba? When does music become Yoruba? I talked about the tonal language. I talked about sonic structures and rhythm. I talked about the indigenous instrumentation, right? The drums and all. I talked about the performance practice. And then I said, with this film, I thought somebody would have maybe provocated to say that, how is performance happening on screen? And my answer was going to be that the entire thing you're seeing is a performance, and the music itself, is going alongside it. I also talked about the Ori Emi and Oriki. I also talked about Yoruba cultural and spiritual worldview in that regard. So I believe that for working definitions, if you are able to tick these boxes, I believe it suffices to a very large extent as it qualifies to be called Yoruba music. Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So, we can continue this conversation on and on. But I think that this study is, very interesting because, you bring in Yoruba music, talking about tradition and different categorizations of the school of thought around Yoruba music. And just like you've ended with, you're looking at both the sonic, you're looking at stories, narratives around faith.